Welcome to the Goya Gatherings Podcast, a serene and inspiring space where the worlds of yoga and wellness converge. Every episode is a journey into the heart of yoga, offering you deep insights, uplifting stories, and practical wisdom. Our conversations are designed to inspire your journey and illuminate your path to well-being. Please remember that the views expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Goya Gatherings or its hosts.
So today we're so happy to welcome one of our leadership team members, Mark Atherton. He is a Goya leadership team member. He is so many other things. He's a professional musician, an opera singer. He's a yoga teacher. He has so many skill sets, and we thought with all of his wealth of information, it would be so wonderful to have him on the podcast today to explain a little bit about how he got started in the yoga teacher training world and how he managed to find a niche and how he managed to grow that niche. So we're so happy to welcome him to the show today. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here to share a little bit of what I've experienced over the years to hopefully help others find their path in this, what can sometimes be a complicated way of sharing skills with the world.
Absolutely. And I think for those of you who don't know, Mark is not only a yoga teacher, he is part of the Goya leadership team. So his journey has brought him full circle to where he's actually part of this organization and really here to inspire, to mentor, to guide students, teachers, schools, wellness practitioners along their journey. So I think Mark's story is a great one to know and to follow and to understand, just to see that there are endless possibilities on where this journey can take you. So I guess a great place to begin, Mark, would be at the beginning. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey into yoga and how you ultimately decided to become a yoga teacher?
So it's not a complicated journey because for me, the process all seemed to come quite naturally. But I was introduced to yoga, I believe it was in 2007 or 8 when I was at university, and I took one yoga. Well, I bought a Groupon pass when everything back then was, Groupon had just started and there was passes for everything. And I bought a pass to a local studio and I bought the pants and yoga pants, yoga mat, everything that I might need. I went once and then never went back.
Okay.
and then about 5 or 6 years later, my partner at the time became a yoga teacher. And so I was watching what they had gone through and the training that they'd done, pre-yoga teacher training, and then after, and then all the teaching that they were doing, and started to take classes and to be a little bit more interested in the world of yoga. Mm-hmm. I'd been teaching for music for a while by then as well. So teaching wasn't anything unusual to me, and it's in my family, parents are teachers, etc. So once my interest was piqued enough in yoga, I decided that I wanted to do a yoga teacher training to then also be able to share yoga because of the impact it was having on my health and well-being.
Okay, awesome. So maybe it's a good idea to share with people where you were at in life before you began teacher training, because often people, I think, worry about taking the leap into teacher training because their life is so set in their ways, even though they want to make a change. And I know you were not only in school, doing your musical studies, you were working. So maybe share a little bit about that and how you essentially got over, not necessarily the fear, but were able to just take that step forward.
Yeah, so I think from the time that I sort of got more interested in yoga to when I did my first teacher training, I think I was out of school by that point. So I'd been working, teaching music. And because I studied arts and it's really difficult at times to make a living in the arts, lots of people default to teaching, but also because I enjoyed teaching, that I started to do more of that. But I found that the age of people that I was teaching was not the age that I was really interested in or wanted to. Like, you know, you're a beginning music teacher, you're teaching a lot of small kids.
Right.
My love is classical music. My love is opera. I was teaching Taylor Swift and songs from Frozen, which obviously, and I learned so much during that time. And it was very formative in terms of my like pedagogy as a teacher and my understanding of how to communicate with children in that type of setting. But I didn't see myself doing that for a particularly long period of time. And then when the opportunity came about, or it seemed, you know, living with someone who was making their living as a yoga teacher made it seem very like a viable path to do with other things, because my partner was a dancer and teaching yoga. So I thought, okay, if I want to be involved in music, but teach something that I'm more passionate about, I'll do my yoga teacher training. During that time that I did my yoga teacher training, I got an amazing job teaching music at a level that I wanted to teach at in an institution that I wanted to teach at. But it was a year contract and just didn't seem like the path forward to happiness being in that type of environment. So I still decided to go ahead and basically left all of my music teaching behind me and just started full-time yoga teaching.
Okay, amazing. So intuitively, you felt making that step made the right sense for you at that time.
Yeah, it totally made the right sense. I think because of a lot of what it came along with it was very appealing to me, which was the sense of, in a way, although it doesn't always work out that way, but having more control over my schedule, over the times of day that I was working, having time in between to do my music things and to also teach music a little bit, but not to the degree that I was, and choosing the work that I wanted to do instead of just taking everything because I needed to.
Okay, amazing. So really just giving yourself a little more control over how your work-life balance came about.
Exactly. And I was very sure of what I was getting into. And I think sometimes that's the fear that people have the idea of, oh, I'm going to become a yoga teacher, but it's difficult to sort of wrap your head around what does that mean on a day-to-day basis. But right. I was living with somebody who was in that 100%. So I could see, okay, so you kind of teach this time and this time, and then you can pick up work and you can give away work. And so I basically knew how the industry, at least that part, worked. So it wasn't like I was jumping in blind.
Okay, amazing. And it's great to have that filter to bounce off of, with having the partner that was doing it day in and day out and really seeing that it is viable and it can be done. You're not, in all likelihood, going to become a millionaire doing it, but finding the passion to do it and wanting to do something that's quality over quantity, I think. And I think all of us sort of made our way into yoga teacher training because of that initially. So why don't we jump a little bit ahead to finding your particular niche in the yoga teacher training world? You obviously have the musical background, which then brings in chant and kirtan and all kinds of other things, in, pronunciation, language skills into yoga teacher training. So what process did you go through to discover that you could apply that skill set and have that be a niche for you when teaching new teachers?
So, yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm very passionate about sharing because I think it's so important. But I realized that not right away, but after a while, having taught yoga for, I would say probably a year and a half, maybe, or 2 years, that all the things that I'd lived and done and studied and practiced prior to yoga were actually useful tools that I could add to set myself apart from a sea of other yoga teachers. And I think that's sometimes a natural progression when we make a big change in our lives to kind of close the door to what it was that happened before and sort of want a clean break from, the business world that I was living when I was working in that office or in that high-powered position, and then coming to yoga and forgetting about all those skills or not thinking that we can apply those skills. But I think it's that mix of things that really help us to not only feel like we're including all parts of ourselves when we're teaching yoga, but also to set ourselves apart financially, because you are looking for work and you're looking to kind of, where can I inch my way in to make a name for myself, to carve out a community for myself. And so I found that actually I had this ability to sing and I could bring music into my classes, and that maybe that's not for everybody and some people wouldn't come. But the moment I started doing that and chanting in every class, the same students started showing up every time. The same thing with teacher training, like starting teaching teacher trainings. I had a lot of music knowledge, and like you said, like the pronunciation of other languages. So learning and applying those skills into teacher training. And also I taught music for years. So I was really comfortable in front of students and have skills of how to explain the same thing in multiple different ways based on the interactions that I'm having. So all of these things helped me to carve out a path where I ended up getting work and other things just based on the fact that I was being known for something very specific.
Right. Yeah, you're kind of, I often think of you as the Pied Piper of Hamelin. When you sing, everyone follows. Because for those of you who haven't experienced Mark's voice, when he's singing, it's truly a religious experience, and not in the religious way, but in that euphemism of just having just this, you'll get the chills and you'll get the goosebumps. And he is such a professional at it, and yet he does it so lovingly and compassionately, and people just feel welcomed and comfortable to even join in with him. And I've seen this firsthand many, many times. So it's really amazing. Now, of course, people are going to wonder out there saying, okay, I'm working at my job, say I'm a nurse at this point in time, and I'm really frustrated and I want my way out. And I really have thought about teacher training a long time. So I'm taking the course. I am not a singer. I don't have these skill sets, because I think what happens is doubts creep up for many people where they feel they don't have anything else to offer other than what they've learned, which I will say to everyone is a complete fallacy, because you are each unique and you each have something and a skill set that you can bring to your students, to your yoga teacher training. So did you have any doubts when you started to build that out for yourself? And how did you manage to overcome those?
Yeah, I mean, I continue to have doubts to this day. We talked about this not so long ago with some of the other team members, the leadership members, but imposter syndrome just doesn't really go away. And I think that although there was a moment when I thought, okay, this actually is possible, I think it's seeing the proof, and for me, it was seeing the students come back, or when someone reached out and said, hey, I heard that you're the guy at this yoga studio who chants, and we're doing a teacher training program, and we were looking for someone to come in and teach the section on, it's like those getting outside validation that what you're doing actually is making a difference and that people want it, I think really helps. When you mentioned about the nurse, the first thing that came to my mind is probably, depending on where it is that they work and what it is that they would be doing, like classes for people of a certain age, because maybe they're a geriatric nurse and they've worked in that environment and they know how to talk to those kinds of patients and understand all the intricacies involved. But I think that, like a doubt and doubts are ongoing, but confidence can grow even amongst doubt.
Right, absolutely. And I think just like you, I have these doubts every day to this day. And I think that is completely natural. And I think it's completely okay. And I think it's also a way for us to challenge ourselves to continue that growth rather than being stagnant. At least I found that for myself. Is that how you feel doubts apply to you?
Yeah, well, and that talking about it and being open about the fact that, it's like we're going to keep having these doubts and we're going to keep questioning our skill set and what it is that we're doing. We just get better ways to cope with or to not listen to it when it's not the moment.
Right. And I think ultimately, if you are giving 100%, if you are showing up at your teaching sessions and you're present and you're there to provide your offerings, I think we can doubt those things, but ultimately you're doing everything you absolutely can. And it can only be a positive impact on the individuals that are present and coming for those offerings. But again, it's human nature to, lack self-confidence sometimes, have those doubts. But, again, I think it's completely natural and normal. So having those always pop up doesn't necessarily mean don't move forward and do something.
Exactly. Well, and as Alan Watts says, there's a great YouTube video someone created with him talking in the background, but it's basically there's someone interested in anything you're interested in. There's people out there, if you want to teach a very specific style of yoga and you think there's not enough people who would be interested in this also, there probably are. And they're waiting for someone to do what it is that you want to do because they also have that same interest.
Absolutely, which is so true. I mean, there are endless amounts of humans on this planet. And I know often people worry too that the yoga teacher training world is saturated in that there's so many people who take this program and begin teaching. But the reality is we know in the industry that we're often searching for teachers, right? Because often people take the training and perhaps only teach a little bit or never teach or choose to only do specific things. So there is a huge opening for people who want to continue joining this profession. And I call it a profession because it really is a profession. It's very particular. It's very needed. It deserves to be called a profession. And I think ultimately it coincides with many things that are mental health related. What we offer is so dynamic and so vast that if we could only get this out to the entire global population on a regular basis, it would be amazing. We know that we're quite a ways away from that, but don't ever feel that you can't take that step because, well, there's so many other people already teaching. Well, you are not those other people. You are your unique self.
There's only one of you. And we also know from being involved in teacher training programs that a lot of people might be yoga teachers, but there's a smaller part of that population of people who are actively teaching full-time as their career, because it is a very specific type of lifestyle. It's a very specific way of working. It's not for everybody. So there may be a lot of yoga teachers, but they teach once in a while, once a week, or very part-time, but like a full-time yoga teacher, there's not so many, I think. I think there's less than maybe people might assume.
Right, absolutely. Because often, a teacher teaches only within their community. Perhaps they've got a studio in their home and they only teach once a week. So you can imagine there's so many other people who are wanting to access yoga. So there's room for teachers. And remember, people shift and migrate in this profession. People become yoga teacher trainers. So they're teaching new teachers. Teachers go into trauma teacher training as well, because there's a big move toward trauma-informed yoga practice. People often only choose to stick within their niche. Often people love teaching kids, so they teach children's yoga only. So never feel that there isn't an opportunity for you. And you'd be amazed how many things open up when you allow for those things to happen. And I think often we as humans, there's that famous adage about if we could just get out of our own way, the doors will open. And, in my past, I've been notorious for making sure those doors were closed because it was just my natural habit, right? Until I really learned to consciously change that habit. So, ultimately there is a space for everyone out there. And I really feel that people need to know that, and need to know that organizations like ours are here to support that. Whether you have the most basic questions, whether you need to find your way into how this all happens, we are committed to growing our Goya Academy, which is the back end for our members. All of our members have access to our Goya Academy, which is filled with tons and tons of videos and lectures and resources and tools for how to build your practice, marketing, business, all the regular things, how to learn to chant, all those types of things. So we're completely committed to having a resource hub for people to come to so that they can access information that is specific to what they are doing, which is teaching yoga.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And we've been doing a great job of building this out over the past 6 months since Goya launched. And I think we have already set ourselves far apart from the existing organizations that are what I believe we feel are somewhat outdated and lacking in change. And that's why ultimately Goya came to be. For those of you who haven't listened to the podcast about how we came to exist, take a listen to that at some point so you'll understand ultimately what our goal is here is to be that support system for those people who are really looking for their place in this community, whether as a student, as a teacher, as a wellness practitioner, as a business owner. We're here to support those. And Mark's story is a great one. I mean, Mark is involved in so many things now, teaching yoga teacher trainings on the leadership team of Goya, continuing his musical passion, and really always looking for the next thing to be able to support his community. And Mark, would you say, 5 years ago, would you have even thought you would be where you are today?
No, not even close. I wouldn't have even. I think that's the wonderful thing is I couldn't have imagined at the time this type of future.
Right.
So it never would have entered my mind.
Yeah, and that's an amazing thing. And I think the great thing is to be open to things and change. And I know when you started this was pre-pandemic, and then of course the pandemic hit, and everything had to shift. So whatever you thought was your niche or your existence at that time, you really had to recreate it a little bit along the way. Because a lot of things shifted, you went online, and it was just another reinvention. And I think that's the beauty of it, is that we as humans, we can reinvent ourselves all the time. And I think we often feel that we're not allowed to, or we're not supposed to, because we studied for a certain profession or meant to stay in that profession until we retire, and then we retire, and then we do what we're supposed to do during retirement, and then it's the end of the life cycle on this planet. So, I'm one of those people that I would say I'm a little bit of a magician in the reinvention department. I tend to add professions and remove professions all the time, just because I feel like there is no reason to not jump in if I'm able to, and if it's available to me. And I mean, you've changed many, many things along the way. I mean, you're involved in all kinds of other things, as far as, editing live streams and running podcasts and doing all kinds of things that perhaps 5 years ago, we didn't even know we had the skill sets to do that, but we learned along the way.
And it's still like, it still continues to be a way to integrate all the different parts of myself into my work in ways I didn't even know. But when I look back, I see, oh, this led to this, and 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 this all can make sense up to this point. But it's very difficult to predict that. So what you said is really important, which is like, and I think for yoga teachers especially, because we want to continue to be offering things that are of interest not only to us, but also to our students. And so the more we study, the more we change, the more we reinvent ourselves and find new ways to do things, the more interesting what it is we're doing on a daily basis will be.
Yeah. And I think that's great, because, becoming a yoga teacher, you take the initial training, which is wonderful, but the reality is there is continuing education all along your life cycle as a teacher, because you're always looking to add new tools and resources to your teacher training and to your offerings for your students. So I think ultimately, what I take from listening to you is that don't set yourself up with these certain expectations and these certain end results. It's great to have goals and to see the future, but be prepared for the road to be a little more windy than you first anticipated, because you could come to a fork in the road and not even have realized that fork was going to exist, and you could take a completely different path. So the first step is the first step, right? You jump in and you begin the training, whether you're doing it with a school that's offering it online or in person. You take your time, you do the training, you integrate that, and then you begin to take the next steps along the way. And for those of you who are students, you're welcome to be members of Goya as well and utilize all the resources we have. We'd love to see you here, but I think that's ultimately the lesson, Mark, in this.
Well, and like, I mean, I wish we could have a whole page on the Goya site with like things that I wish I knew before I started. But I think one of those things that I would put that I wish I'd known before I started was to ask more questions about what it's really like, and to ask more questions about what the process is and some of the ins and outs that even I, living with a person who was currently doing it, didn't think to ask, because I am a different type of teacher. But like finding out as much as possible beforehand, which is why I think being in a community like Goya is so important, because you don't become a yoga teacher the day you graduate from your yoga teacher training. That path really starts beforehand when you're a student yourself. And at a certain point, it maybe starts to be like, oh, this could be interesting to do that. And that's really the point. And all that information and training that you're gathering, even before you start your teacher training, there's time to ask the really important questions then and to find out as much information as possible. So if you whether you're going to make a big change and like do a whole 180 in your life and do a yoga teacher training, or whether you'll find you're hoping to incorporate it in different ways, maybe not in so much of a career way, that you know what it is you're likely getting yourself into.
Absolutely. And I think you just gave yourself a task by creating that list for November's. So coming soon, the list of things I wish I knew. So stay tuned. So I think we'll leave it there for today. Again, people have access to us. They can reach out to us at any time, but really think about it. If you're on the fence about whether you're going to step into the forum of taking that yoga teacher training and decide ultimately for you what is the best thing for you. And if you were like me many, many moons ago, if you had it in the back of your mind and it always kept creeping up, I believe that's usually the universe saying, take that step. But again, you have to do what's right for you. You can always listen to your intuition. It's usually 99% correct. So thanks again for being on the podcast today, Mark. And we look forward to having you on the podcast, sharing many, many other things in the future.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.